Like most programs, Live's browser provides a way to locate, audition, and load devices, presets, and clips into your Ableton projects. Let's start by looking at the categories area of the browser. So I've just got a default set open, and the browser is located over here on the left side of both session and arrangement view. If you want to hide the browser, you can do that a couple of different ways. You can click the little triangle in the upper left-hand corner, or you can do this by key command, which on a Mac would be Option Command B for browser or Control Alt B on a PC. And that toggles it open and closed. So the browser is divided into two areas. On the left-hand side, this is called the sidebar, and then we have the content column here on the right. So let's go to the categories area, and let me start off by saying that the first three items, sounds, drums, and instruments, all offer a way to access an Ableton Live virtual instrument and or preset. So they're just organized differently. In the sounds category, we see it organized by sound type. In the drums category, these are all going to be devices of some kind that are associated with drums. And in the instruments category, we see the list of Ableton virtual instrument devices that are included with the Live Suite version of Ableton Live. Now, you'll notice that on the left-hand side of this first item, analog, there's a triangle. And if I click open that triangle, we'll see categories underneath that. And then eventually, if you open up category, you're also going to see presets of some kind. Now, if you want to audition one of these presets, if the audition or preview button is enabled down here at the bottom of the browser, all you need to do is click the preset. And it just repeats until you choose something else or stop it. And I stopped that by pressing my space bar. Now, if you've stopped it on a particular preset and you want to hear it again, you can just press your right arrow. There you go. All right, let me close that back up. And let's continue on. Now, after instruments, the next category, audio effects, allows us to access the audio plugins that are included with Ableton Live. So we have these organized by category. And let me point out that you can open one category at a time unless you click a category while holding down the Command key or Control key. That will allow you to have two open at once. So inside each one of these subfolders, you can see a particular device, like let's say delay. And then if you click open the triangle on the delay, we're actually going to see some different categories there. And then I can open it up one more time. And finally, when you see the little rectangle shape with the kind of line across the top, that's actually showing us device presets. Now, I'm going to point out that I've actually got two columns showing here in the audio effects category, and yours might not. So just note that in the content area up at the top, you can actually right-click on the title bar up there, and you have these 5 extra categories of which you can show one at a time. So if I unclick type, that might be the way yours is looking right now. But I often like to see the type, and that's usually the second category that I will enable. And you'll notice that I can widen this area if I need some extra room by moving my cursor over the dividing line between the browser and session view and clicking and dragging. And I can also change the width of the columns up top if I need to do that. Okay, so all Ableton audio effects. Below that, in the MIDI effects category, we see all of the MIDI effects that are included with Ableton Live. Now here, you'll notice that we do have devices, and then if I click open a triangle, I eventually see presets. But I see two different shapes. So the rectangle with the kind of stripe across the top is an Ableton MIDI effect. And then these ones that have kind of the 4 lines extending from the 4 corners, those are actually Max for Live devices. And Max for Live, or the company that manufactures Max, which is a company called Cycling 74. That company is also owned by Ableton, and so some of these devices are now starting to show up in the audio effects category and the MIDI effects category, and those are typically ones that are used a lot. And that would include things like the expression control and the new MPE control. So these are devices that process the MIDI signal rather than an audio signal. Now, next we have a category all of its own for Macs. And if you're not aware of what Macs is, it's a visual programming language that can be used to create musical and multimedia devices. And Ableton has built a hook into the program so that all of those devices can be used natively here in Ableton Live. And there's a lot of them. So if you open up one of these categories, you can see there is just a lot of extra plugins. So these are created by people out there in the community that run into a problem that maybe they're not able to do with an Ableton audio or MIDI effect, and they create one. Next, in the plugins category, this is where you can find all of your third-party content. And this is going to include virtual instruments, as well as MIDI plugins and audio plugins. So it's all here. And so you're going to see differing content depending upon what third-party plugins you've purchased. And you can see I've been at it for a while, and I've got way too many. Now, if I pull down to one of these categories, like the Waves category, and open that up, we see all these different devices. And if I click the little disclosure triangle on the left of one of them, you'll notice that when I do that, nothing happens. So you can't actually get at a specific preset for one of these third-party devices until you load it onto a track and then open up the third-party user interface. And through the interface itself, you'll be able to access the presets that come with that device. So the next couple categories allow us to access content of some kind in your clips and samples categories. So in the clips area, we see all of these different clips. These could be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 bars long, and they could be MIDI or audio. And below that, we see samples. Again, these could be longer or shorter samples, but they're bits of audio, and they could also be as short as a single hit, often what we call or refer to as a one-shot sample of, say, a kick or a snare. And then finally, these last two categories are new to Ableton Live 11. Now, we've always had grooves, but we've never been able to access them through their own category. And so the groove files are essentially MIDI files that contain rhythmic information and velocity information, and we can use those groove files to quantize or adjust the rhythm of both MIDI clips and audio clips. And then finally, we have this new templates category, and this allows us to save a live set as a template that we can access here. And so this means that we can create a bunch of tracks and add a bunch of virtual instruments and route a bunch of stuff. And that might be good for a certain style or a certain workflow. And then we can save that as a template so that when we come to either create music in that style or we need to work in that workflow, we can start from that template instead of doing it from scratch. Okay, so now that you understand how the categories area of the browser is organized, you'll be able to find devices, clips, and audio files to use in your Ableton projects. We'll continue in the next video with the Places section of the browser and show you how you can access folders and packs on your hard drives.